Hi, I'm from Quito, Ecuador, and I become a mindfulness instructor because I discovered it about over 3 years ago, and it was like, this is it for me. It encompassed everything I had always been looking for. Thank you very much, Jon and Soren, for this opportunity. It's very important for me. And okay, my questions. I want to pick up something from the last conversation. I don't know if we can say that emptiness and spaciousness is the same. I prefer to say always concentrate on spaciousness than emptiness. So my first question would be that. Then I wanted to make a comment on our meditation before. I was feeling very relaxed all the while. And then all of a sudden I started to feel like a stinging here, like in my heart, in my hand, in my foot. And I realized it was when Jon started to talk about pandemic. So I noticed how in my body, as soon as the word comes up without being expecting it, of course, it triggered something, these feelings. And my last question is not complicated. It has to do with meditation itself. Meditation sitting down in an upright position, and the meditation which goes on when we are living fully in the present, right? You could be standing up, walking, eating, whatever. But in one of the conferences, Jon, you said you can meditate standing down, laying down, and everything in whatever position. However, I feel that for me, it's really important to do the sitting meditation. So that's what I wanted. I would like you to comment on that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So let me go in reverse order.
Okay.
So in terms of the sitting meditation, yeah, sitting is very, very important. And the more you don't like it, probably the more you should do it. Because one's resistance is actually kind of diagnostic of certain kind of aversion. And aversion is something that can actually prevent us from seeing clearly because it clouds the mind. I want this, I don't want that. I like the good feeling when I'm lying down, but I don't like sitting. So I often encourage people who don't like the sitting meditation, practice more sitting because the resistance is a very fruitful object of attention. I mean, after all, we do a lot of sitting, even if you're not a meditator, sometimes you're going to be sitting. So maybe there's some problem with understanding what is really the invitation when we talk about sitting. So, and then, in terms of my having mentioned the word pandemic and you noticed a contraction, that's part of the curriculum too. If I tried to avoid anything that would make us feel uncomfortable, I wouldn't be doing my job because because that's going to happen as soon as we get off this call and you go back to real life. The word pandemic is everywhere. And what we're learning how to do is actually recognize the enormity of the circumstances that we're in and then find viable ways to whatever degree possible, not just as individual people stuck in our homes, but as societies to actually liberate ourselves from all of the causes and conditions that basically brought this virus upon us. And there are many causes and conditions. You can read about them in the newspaper all the time, and they're being debated constantly about who knew this was coming and who didn't, and who cared and who didn't, and whether things are constructed in such a way that the drug companies don't have much incentive, profit incentive, certainly not, for developing things that would protect us from one-time viruses because you only need it once. And they benefit much more if you need something for the rest of your life. Take a drug all the time. So that means we need to rethink institutions. Who's going to take responsibility for taking care of all of us if it's not capitalistic drug companies? So these are just questions that are in the air. And yeah, we can feel really oppressed and contracted around them because who wants to think about this in the first place? We just want to live our lives and be left alone in a certain way and contribute to enhancing beauty and reducing suffering, but this is part of the curriculum. Why? Because it's the world we find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty of mindfulness, is it is big enough to actually hold that in a way that doesn't unbalance us for long. We can lose our balance,
Right.
but don't forget about balance. Balance is not rigidity. Balance is a
Right.
continual process of losing your balance and then regaining it, shifting to the other side. And remember when we were doing the standing things the other day, standing on one foot, that's a
Mm-hmm.
really important thing to do all the time. Stand on one foot longer than you feel comfortable doing it and get into understanding that balance isn't rigidity, it's losing your balance and then having much more freedom to move this way and move that way without falling.
Right.
Okay, and then your first question, remind me what that
It
was.
was about spaciousness and
Oh,
emptiness.
spaciousness. Yeah, spaciousness is another very good word for, fullness or awareness or
Mm-hmm.
emptiness. Okay,
Yeah.
but the emptiness refers to a kind of non-substantiality of the notion of self, of a reified notion of an independent, self-existing container. And basically, the realization of
Mm-hmm.
interconnectedness um, demonstrates or makes completely apparent that nothing is hermetically sealed off by itself and self-existing. So
Mm-hmm.
everything is in intimate relationship with everything else in the universe.
Uh-huh.
And so nothing is like totally itself without being in relationship to everything else. And so that means it's empty of fixed, enduring, eternal self nature. And that includes humans. But we think that we fall into thinking and then we think I'm me in some very
Right.
often reduced way. And so that's where all that comes from, is a kind of an attempt to put language around an experience of wholeness as opposed to an experience of um, collapse into sort of the personal pronouns and a very inaccurate um, articulation of what it means to be human, what it means to be me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks for
Thank you.
those great questions.
Appreciate it. Thank you.